Hello everyone. Very nice to meet you, Gabriel. All right, let's start. Okay, so we're here to speak today about a very specific topic. It's the integration between Dremio and Power BI in direct query mode. I want to really share our experience, our journey in implementing that at BIC. So hopefully you'll find this session interesting if you're going through the same project. So a little bit about myself. I'm the lead data architect at BIC. I have 15 years professional experience exclusively in business intelligence and data fields. I joined BIC in 2019. I'm in charge of the global cloud data platform architecture, and I also work on some strategic data projects as well as innovation. So if you want to get in touch on LinkedIn, feel free to shoot me a message, or if you have any questions regarding this session, I'll be glad to meet you guys and answer you through LinkedIn. Okay, a quick word about BIC. I don't know if the company still needs introducing, but okay, I think everyone knows BIC. We manufacture three main categories of products: lighters, stationery, and shavers. We operate in 160 countries. We have 24 plants across the world. 91% of our products are manufactured by BIC. We have approximately 26 million products that are sold every day around the world. So, okay, big company with, of course, big data challenges. Yeah, that's you have multiple brands and stuff like that, but you can see we'll handle multiple topics in our data department. Anything that any big company should really face. Okay, let's start with the first too long didn't read summary. Very quickly, this session is really about warning you, kind of like letting you know if you intend to use Dremio as a data source for Power BI models in direct query mode. You should be aware of some obstacles, some hurdles that you will find along the way. We'll talk about how to overcome those also. Some of them are inherent to Power BI direct query mode. That's just the way it works, so you need to be aware about that. And some of them are also inherent to Dremio. We'll really hopefully talk about those in details. I'll try to keep some time for questions. But yeah, don't be scared about that. We can still achieve really acceptable, good results in this scenario. Expectations must be managed. If you have ever experienced direct query modes of Power BI, you know that expectation really must be managed. It's very different from the experience with the import mode. You will, however, achieve significant savings on your infrastructure costs and specifically on your Power BI premium capacities costs. That's something that you have certainly experienced if you handle large amounts of data or if you have heavy tabular models. Okay, so that's for the summary. Let's get into the details. Okay, Power BI at BIC very quickly. All right. There's no question about Power BI. It's a really good reporting tool, reporting software. It's used by many companies. It's the tool that I believe the majority of clients now use in their companies. That's the way it is. You can hate it or love it, but that's really the way it is. It's a really good product with a really good cost to feature ratio. Problem with Power BI is a lot of it is free, right? You can use Power BI desktop for free, for example. You can start sharing even reports for a very, very reasonable cost. The thing is, once you start doing serious data, what I call serious real life data at an enterprise scale, your models, if they're in import mode, your models can weigh a lot. They have very big memory footprint. So it will often force you to deploy your tabular models on either Azure Analysis Services instance or on a Power BI premium capacity. These are expensive. Both of these are expensive. Power BI premium capacities are double expensive. They are actually, for the same amount of memory, they are double the price of an Azure Analysis Services. Prices were public a few months/years ago. It's no secret. For the same amount of memory for an AAS instance, you have double the price for Power BI premium capacity. That's just how it is. So yeah, one solution, once you start using Power BI and you have heavy models that you need to deploy, one solution could be, okay, I'm going to use direct query mode. I'm not going to use import mode. But if you have experienced that, well, it's really not very practical. Having good performance on large direct query models using, the usual data sources that we have is almost impossible. If you deal with enterprise scale data, it's almost impossible. So up until now, we didn't really have a good solution with an affordable software or data source that could let us leverage direct query models. And that's where Dremio really brought us something. And that's where Dremio really is helping us at BIG to reduce those costs, those Power BI premium capacities costs. And I want to, share this experience with you. So here we obviously are leveraging the Reflections feature of Dremio. That's the interesting part. That's what allows Dremio to answer a query in a few milliseconds, even on huge fact tables. Fact tables, with billions of rows or a billion or two. We have the case at BIC regularly of data in a fact table. And we can still have a Power BI direct query model and good performance on reports, acceptable user acceptable performance where reports are reactive. When users play with slicers or filters in the report, they don't wait a lot of seconds or minutes to see their report refresh or display there. We are really around the 3 to 5 seconds responsiveness of the visuals in your report. So that's what we do. We now deployed Power BI tabular models in direct query modes that use Dremio as a data source, and obviously we deploy them on a Power BI premium capacity. There's no question you will still need to deploy your models on a PBI premium capacity. The thing is, you can buy the cheapest one. You can buy the one with the lowest cost possible, the lowest memory possible, because your models will not weigh anything. If they're in direct query mode, they will weigh almost nothing. They still have maybe a few megabytes of data for metadata mainly, but you will not have the data in memory. Okay, so let's talk about those issues, let's say, those hurdles that we faced along the way. So the first one is about the connector. So once you start Power BI, you say, okay, fine, I'm gonna connect to Dremio, and then you go into the Get Data button, and then you look for Dremio connector, and boom, you find 2 connectors. So we at BIC, we use Dremio software, right? We don't use Dremio Cloud, mainly because when we started using Dremio, it was quite a few years ago, and there was no Dremio Cloud. So we invested in the Dremio software Kubernetes deployment. So that's the regular Dremio software. Now, the thing is, in Power BI, you have two connectors. One is called Dremio software, one is called Dremio Cloud. So my advice for you, even if you have Dremio software, use the Dremio Cloud connector. That's really important, and that's something. Start good with it, because if you model, if you do 10, 15 different models and you use the Dremio software, you're gonna have to go back into them and change to the Dremio collector. Why is the Dremio Cloud Connector, sorry. So why is that? It's because of the authentication part, the identity delegation. So imagine you did a Power BI tabular model, you're happy with it, and then you deploy it on the Power BI service, right? You need to configure authentication, and you also want, the thing that you want is to have the identity of the person reading your report, your Power BI report, delegated down to Dremio. You want to know at the Dremio level who is querying the table, the identity of the person. Of course, we have Azure Active Directory integration. Our users are Azure Active Directory users. But yeah, so Azure ID integration works with Dremio software, but the identity delegation part, it does not work with the Dremio software connector. As far as I know, it will not work. It's only been developed and supported by Microsoft on the Dremio Cloud connector. Now, this is important because if you don't have identity delegation, you don't have row level security. And that's something that at some point you will need in your company if you're doing real life data. If you have a model about your sales, for example, you have a fact table with your sales. We're going to see an example later on. We're going to talk about row level security, but you're going to need row level security at some point, and that's only available with the Dremio Cloud Connector. So use the Dremio Cloud Connector even if you have Dremio software with a Kubernetes deploy. Okay. Next one is the float issue. So we discovered that if you have, say you have your data in Parquet files, right, in an Amazon S3 or an NDLS Gen 2 in Azure. Say your tables in the Parquet format, you have one or more column using the float data type. Well, that's not going to work. That's not going to work at all. It's a very specific reason. I'm not going to go into details. We don't really have the time. I'll be happy to answer any questions. But basically, Power BI is going to try and cast everything to decimal. So the queries that Power BI generate down to Dremio will contain a cast. When Dremio receives that with a cast, it's not able to correctly evaluate the cost of this cast, and will sometimes disregard reflections and will not use them. So you will not be able to have your queries accelerated. We discovered that, a year ago, and we actually had, on the official Dremio documentation, we had this little paragraph, this little bullet point added, because we felt it's really important that people know that. Otherwise, you would have to go back and convert your data, or have to cast everything in your Dremio data sets. So yeah, let's save some time there. Just be aware of that. Next thing, keep the tabular models simple. That's really important. If you intend to go that route, if you intend to take that journey using Dremio in direct query mode, you have to know you won't be able to make complex tabular models and have good performance. It will work, of course, but you will not have user accepted performance. You will have several seconds visuals not responsive fast enough, and your users will just say, my reports are unusable. So again, I'm not going to go into too much details. You have 3 links, very easily findable. This is the official, the name of the page that I put in the slide deck. I hope that you'll be able to download the slide deck. Otherwise, just shoot me a message and I'll send you the link. It's really 3 good reads, 3 excellent reads. The third one is a webinar done by Chris Webb. If you're here in this session, I'm pretty sure you know who Chris Webb is, and he knows a thing or two about the tabular model technology. So it's really good. Basically, what you need to keep in mind is, okay, no calculated columns in your tabular models, no Power Query transformations. Pre-calculate everything you can in your Dremio VDSs, virtual data sets. Keep the DAX calculation simple. The regular DAX functions, regular aggregations function, regular filters, nothing too fancy. Don't use calculation groups, as attractive as they are, as useful as they are. Calculation groups, I love them. We have estimated that having more than 2 calculation groups in a model creates issues. Power BI then generates SQL queries that are just too complex, or it's going to split. Just one visual can generate 15, 20 different queries that are going to be played against Dremio. So that's kind of a test and see thing. But yeah, keep that in mind. Avoid anything fancy. The fancy thing that we want to do with tabular models when we have a special calculation group to allow users to have a slicer to switch measures, for example, or stuff like that. Don't do that. It's not going to be good for your performance. Avoid too many visuals on the same Power BI report page. That's super important. When you have one page and you put on it 20 different visuals, and everything is a visual in Power BI, right? You have slicers, you have charts, you have, and everything is a visual. So every visual is going to generate SQL queries that are going to be run against Dremio. So if you have 20 visuals, they're going to generate at least 20 queries, sometimes more, as soon as you open the page. So try to reduce that, have the bare minimum visuals by page. Yeah, also don't be afraid of having multiple fact tables in the same tabular model. I cannot stress this enough. I have seen developers, data developers, data engineers that are just scared to have 3, 4, 5 fact tables in the same model. Even sometimes for the same fact, let's say sales, it's really super interesting to have separate fact tables if you're analyzing things at different level of granularities or different level of aggregations. Don't hesitate to put that in separate tables. That will give you a better performance. So yeah, keep that simple. That's really, really super important, because even with a great model and the right underlying Dremio and the right reflections, like you have done your work and you have reflections that answer queries in less than a second. Let's say you are on a millisecond scale and you're super happy, even with a fact table with a billion rows, you say, okay, I've done what I can on the Dremio side. So in direct query mode, you will still face some issues. For example, Power BI tends to generate sometimes dozens of queries for just one visual. Say you have a bar chart or maybe a chart with a little bit more, let's say, non-standard. You don't really understand always why, but if you look at the queries that are generated and sent to Dremio, you'll find, say, okay, for just this visual, Power BI generated and sent 12, 15, sometimes 20 queries. So you have to be aware of that. And the main problem with that is the queries are sent sequentially, and that's a huge issue, not just for Dremio. This is something that Power BI does for any kind of direct query data source. So until last year, because this changed last year, but until last year, Power BI would generate those queries sequentially. So even if Dremio was able to answer every query in, say, 100 milliseconds, it would receive them sequentially, and this would prolong for you the time, for your users, prolong the time for the visual, the time for the visuals to refresh. So it would give a really bad user experience. We're going to talk about the until last year part, because this has been finally, say, not completely solved, but Power BI delivered the feature last year. Very, very interesting feature. I'm going to talk about in coming slides. Yeah, please observe the queries generated by Power BI. Your reflections are rarely going to be covering the queries generated by Power BI. That is super rare. You have to let users play with your reports, and you have to see the queries that are generated by Power BI. You'll see some surprise, and then you'll say, okay, I need to create a reflection for this and this and that. Usually it's aggregation reflections, and they are very dependent on the kind of visuals that you put in your report and the kind of interaction that the users have with the visuals. One thing that people often disregard is something called anchor datasets. In Dremio, you have a concept. I'm not sure it's in the documentation anymore, but I remember I've seen that. It was like 4 years ago when we started, 5 years ago, at the end of 2019, we started playing with Dremio. There is something called anchor datasets, and these datasets can have reflections on them that can be leveraged to accelerate some other queries. So learn about that. It's really, really interesting, and obviously observe the queries that are generated by Power BI. Just go to Dremio, just go to the jobs section. You will see everything, and you'll be able to analyze and understand what kind of reflection or how can you accelerate the queries generated by Power BI. One last thing, this is an issue that's pretty common in direct query mode models. It's the maximum allowed size issue. That's super weird. It's say you have a fact table where you have, of course, obviously more than 1 million rows, and say a sales fact table, and you're just querying your table. You just have one visual in Power BI to have your sales by year, for example. So in your table, you will obviously not have 1 million rows. You'll have maybe 3-4 rows if you have 3-4 years of data. And still, you will see this error and you'll say, okay, how come Power BI tried to retrieve 1 million rows from my data source? Why did it not aggregate or filter the data? This happens with direct query models. Chris Webb has 2 blog posts actually dedicated to this area. Excellent read. I suggest you read about the solution, a nice trick he's proposing for that. Again, it's not really a Dremio issue, this one. It's a Power BI issue. One thing I want to say is this issue can also arise outside of the causes that are identified by Chris Webb. For example, I had this issue come because I made a slight change in the DAX formula where I used a switch function, and it just broke everything, broke the context, and basically I was having this error, even if I never wanted to retrieve really 1 million rows. So this is to be aware of, and please have a read on the Chris Webb blog post, who is explaining a lot of things about this issue. Okay, moving on. I know time is going to be tough. Direct query parallelization. This is the feature I was telling you about. It will allow you to not have Power BI generate queries sequentially. You now have a certain level of parallelization. There are nice articles to read about those. I put these two. The second one, okay, it's Snowflake, okay, but I wasn't be able to find a Dremio, an interesting article with Power BI direct query parallelization and Dremio, but okay, you can consider it's the exact same thing with Snowflake. Very good read. You'll learn about there's a specific setting that you can modify on your published tabular model, and so it was something in a kind of a preview stuff that was not supported by Power BI Desktop, but since Power BI Desktop February, it is that compatibility level of that you can change in your model is now supported by Power BI Desktop. So we no longer have errors when you play with the model for which you did the trick. Okay, the next one, horizontal fusions. That's something else that Power BI wanted to develop, actually developed and was in preview a few months ago, not even that far away. A year ago, I'd say a year ago. And it was in preview for a long time, and then it just disappeared. I don't know if it was integrated into the product, but it just disappeared. So it was a good feature that also reduced the number of queries generated by Power BI in direct query mode. Another article I found about horizontal fusion is there. Row level security, put it only for the Braves because you will face a few issues with that. You have an example here of just wanted to explain the row level security. You have a sales fact table, very, very basic example, where you have sales for different areas, and then you want people to access, depending on the role where they are, you want them to access only the rows for a certain area. So you would implement some row level security, or as it is called, row access policies in Dremio. And then, okay, you will face issues if you do that. So that's how you do it. It's called row access policy. That's how you do it. You have a screenshot, very detailed screenshot of how you do it. But then you will face an issue. You will face this error because you're happy you have row access policy working, row level security working, but when you create a reflection on those data sets that have, you will face an error. Now, this error has still not been fixed. It was supposed to be fixed in version 24.3.0, was not fixed, and then we had a hope in the version 24.3.4, it was not fixed, and finally, in April, a few days ago, it has been declared as fixed in the 25 version. So kudos, we could try it. Unfortunately, there are some major changes that we need to um, deal with before upgrading. But okay, good news. And okay, some DevOps stuff. When you're happy and you want to deploy your stuff with automated CI/CD, if you want to deploy your tabular models, there is one last hurdle to overcome where you have to check that little box that will delegate the identity of your Power BI report readers down to Dremio, and doing it through the service manually is very easy. Doing it automatically on a CI/CD pipeline, it takes some work. And again, if you want to know more, if you want some more details, just reach out to me.